show you some stuff. I'm kind of going to explain to you why I do the things I do, and I'm going to kind of elaborate on what Rich talked about last week. It's kind of a continuation of what Rich said, because it's very important for all of you guys that are wanting to continue into the welding profession, because at some point you're going to have to do this, and it's been my privilege, I guess, to be taught by a lot of good people that showed me the right way to do it and not really tell me why until it was the point where I had to do it and all of it came together. All of us learn at different levels and stages, and we all have those enlightenment moments, and we're all happy. And those will probably happen to you at some point, and you're going to be like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's just how I am. Rich talked about last week was setting your machine correctly. That's very important for what I'm going to talk about next. Because all you guys at some point probably want to be a certified welder. For all you guys I talk to, what's the first thing I tell you to do? Weld a stringer bead. Okay, welding a stringer bead, like Rich talked about last week, is this welding one weld and welding a weld across that way. They keep on doing that. Hey, guess what? Guess what you gotta do when you're certified?
Stringer beads?
You gotta weld stringer beads. So you guys are working your way towards that. So when you do your certification, you're gonna be welding stringer beads. But I do notice that because of our conditions we have, some of our steel is not the greatest. And I was always taught how to prep. Cleaning your steel is vital to anything you weld together. For rust, mill scale, all you guys that cut your stools, what's that nasty stuff on the edges of it? Hey, when you weld it, what happens to your weld? Gives you a big, nice bubble with a hole in it because you didn't grind it off.
It's true. Garbage in, garbage out.
Hey, guess what? I've only seen like 3 of them. I can see it. That's what happens. You want to prep your steel before you weld it. So when you're doing any type of certification, you're more than likely going to have a weld joint like so, with a vacuum bar. You're going to have to make that bevel. 22.5 degrees each side. You're going to cut that with a torch. You don't want to leave it like that. With all your experience you've seen with a torch and what it does, you want to leave it like that?
It'll be a mess, yeah.
It'll be a mess, exactly. You want to learn how to use a grinder correctly. You want to use the proper disc correctly. And make sure that you have these 2 areas as clean as possible before you weld. You leave all that mill scale,
Clean.
all that other stuff on there, that slag.
Clean, flat, perfect.
It's gonna fail if you don't remove it. So
Go ahead.
in DeCall's sneaky ways taught you guys that by seeing the slag and trying to weld over it, and it's not working out for you. We have to clean that off. I was always told preparation is 99% of your weld. All you have to do after you prep it is put weld it together. But if you don't know how to prep it correctly, or you don't understand why you're doing it, it doesn't do you any good to weld it together, because you're going to have to fix it. So that's my big thing. That's what I was taught, and I know struggling is part of learning, and I hate to see people struggle just because it's just my nature. I really hate to do that, because I like people to succeed, and I like to see people have that look of accomplishment when they're done and know that they did it. And everybody needs help. I need help. DeCall really needs help. But You know, it's just one of those things that you want to make sure that you always have a shiny piece. You know, we saw that stool over there that, you know, blinds you when you look at it. That's what you want your steel to look like pretty much when you weld it. You want it clean. It's not going to be the whole thing. It's just going to be that one spot. You're going to have it nice and shiny. And you want to weld that and keep a clean edge through each pass. So as you're going through each pass, you're going to weld your root pass here. And you're going to clean that whole top of it, and you want to clean these edges on both sides. Why do you want to clean edges on both sides?
Get all the crap out of there.
Your slag has a tendency to build up really, really cool right here and there. So when you do your second, third, fourth passes, and they tie into these corners, by the time you get up to the top and you don't clean those corners, when Rich, me, or Pedro go to cut that out, the coupon's going to look like this. And your weld part's going to be right here. This is your weld right here. It's going to have a nice little line right down the middle of it.
Yeah, or speckles or whatever.
So when you bend that, it's going to be a failure, and you're going to be unhappy.
And they really will fail it for flaws. I mean, you think that looks beautiful, and they bend it, and it's got flaws, and you're surprised.
So I always stress blame this, and a lot of people don't. It's all right, I can burn the slag out. You can't burn the slag out. You can try, you might get some, but you're not going to get all of it. Because at some point it's going to come back into the weld. So I know a lot of old welders say I can burn it out. I've said you can burn it out because I've done it, but I wouldn't really recommend it because
It's like saying you could drive on the edge of a cliff. Well, why would you want to drive on the edge of a cliff? It's stupid.
So,
just clean it out.
Just clean it out. So when you come up to this point, and you get to this point where I'm bending it, it looks nice and pretty. I didn't bring my, I have coupons of my own that I did years ago. I keep them for samples, show what a bend test looks like. With the bend test, you can see the weld, the cross-section of the weld of the pieces just like this, and you'll see all these welds. In that V, in that coupon. And you'll see every little pocket in there if there is one. If there isn't one, you won't see nothing except for the weld. All you'll see is that. And that's what you want to see because you prepped it. So all your grinding that you're doing, it's good practice because you want to learn how to use that grinder to your advantage. Let the grinder do the work for you. You don't have to push on it. When you cut these pieces, 22.5 degrees each side is 45-degree angle. What happens if you push that grinder into that? Makes a nice little dip. So guess what that means? More welding for you that you don't want to do when you're certifying. Every little piece of metal you take off is something you have to add back on when you're certified. So you learn how to use that grinder. Just don't think about it this time taking it off. Take time to look at what you're doing. And then you'll see what it does. And then as you get to where you want to prep steel to weld, it's the second nature. So
wire brush, would you recommend a wire brush wheel?
When you certify, you're not allowed to use any power tools. So you have to learn how to weld with a wire brush and a chipping hammer.
Like a hand brush?
Yeah, like a hand brush. Manual hand brush. No
Serious?
power tools.
Idea.
No power tools are allowed when you certify.
Now, if you're welding a pipe, do you leave your bevel, do you leave your bevel flat up a certain distance from the material? Like you leave the bottom third of the material flat?
Yeah,
start your bevel
you
from there?
have your land. They call it land and pipe. You have this part right here, because this is an open root, and you have this little section that some pipe welders like 16th, some like an 8th. Varies on how good you are. The thicker the land, the possibility you won't be able to get the weld on the back side where you want it to be for the full pen weld. I use probably a 16th myself, and that's able to burn that edge off and get the weld on the back side of it and be able to go around. So
I think the landing, isn't the landing calculated by the thickness? I think it is, and I think it's in the D11 for as far as certifications go, what it calls out the exact dimensions on the whole coupon. But there's, huh? Yeah, no, and I'm just saying each coupon has different dimensions. So every weld test you take has already pre-established plate sizes and thicknesses, position, all that.
this one shows it at 16th or anything greater than 4 inches.
I mean, to me personally, it doesn't matter at all. You're gonna weld it. I mean, around the 16th, it's gonna be a perfect weld no matter what you do.
Right. So 16th is a good number to use for
Yeah.
your land on the pipe. So that way, when your weld comes in with your rod, you can burn that back side off, and you want your weld on the inside to look like the weld on the outside. But prepping those, you use a H&M bevel beveler. You have to prep that edge too. If you're real good, the minimum amount of prep, you see that little bit of slag pie on the inside, and you don't want to take a lot of that bevel off because those H&M bevelers do a really good job. So learning how to use the grinder is probably like your best tool, because once you learn how to use that, you're saving yourself a huge amount of time from more welding.
Oh yeah.
So, and the mill scale, you get rid of the mill scale, relatively simple. You know, buffing wheel, power wire brush. But when it comes to certification, you want to make sure you grind and get it nice and shiny, and all your edges are square. Because everything you prep comes back to help you. Everything you don't prep comes back to hurt you.
I used to think that like some of the stuff you weld it and you're never going to see it even in 100 years again, but just in the last 30, 40 years I have seen things get corroded, come back, and there's some harsh environments out there. High pressure, corrosive water, corrosive other fluids that eat away at the pipe, or even structural. Some of it will actually come apart in your lifetime. Get it perfectly clean, and you have and do it correctly. You want the last thing to come apart is your weld, you know, because people could really have the greatest chance for success over the next 100 years of nobody getting hurt because of your welding. It's important.
And it brings up a good point: repair work, prepping a repair job. Just because you're repairing something doesn't mean that somebody screwed up. It may not. It could have been a failure that something hit it. I do a lot of repairs on failures that somebody ran into it.
Mm-hmm.
But not because the welder failed. Somebody ran into it, they have to fix it. They have to cut a piece out and re-weld it. That's where you learn how to prep. When you prep this, it's the same exact thing. You take what you do in your certification and you prep it the same way you're going to weld in the field. Once you learn how to do that, everything prepped after that it's going to be the same. You're going to learn how to do it that way, and you'll prep it the same way every time. So don't look at the certification as like I do it once and I'm done. You have to do that every time you weld. Whether it's a bevel or just the edge, you want it clean. And so when you're done, you can walk away with from that weld with utmost confidence. It's not going to fail because you did do something. You did everything you were supposed to do. You prepped it, welded it within the parameters you're supposed to weld. If it fails and it was a repair, it could have been something else. But they're going to look at the weld, and well, the weld didn't fail, something else failed around. So, the preparation in your weld, before you weld, is the biggest thing.
Hey, do you want to tell them anything about this whole year, what you worked on through 2013, all last year? Okay.
Trying to block that out of my mind.
Now, yeah, Tom, like people like sometimes they start out, Tom was our in-house quality, what did you, quality control for a major job, okay? And some people wanted to argue with him a lot this year because the first stage is our in-house passes it off, second stage is third party or outside inspection companies are protecting the owner. So the owner that owns the project also has to check for quality in his own way. So there's a lot of arguing going on all the time about the level of quality because a lot of guys get lazy, okay? And they're not so much lazy, and people also get into a rut, a routine, welding the same situations over and over. And they like to take a few shortcuts or shorten it up, all right? But Tom will tell you, like, the best interest of everyone, including the owners of projects, is the highest amount of quality and consistency, and every weld being perfect, which takes a lot of effort, you know? To get a perfect weld every time is very valuable. I was just making the point that guys like to argue about it, though, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And it's, you know, I always go with prep, and with that particular job, we had to do a lot of different unusual things. We were welding on rusty material. It was made that way.
Designed to be rusty.
It was designed to be rusty, so you actually had to clean off the rust to weld on the rust. They didn't want that first layer of rust on there. But if you removed that first layer of rust, it was an acceptable means of cleaning. If you did that, the weld became acceptable. Without it, it usually didn't work out very well. So
people forget to come back on their weld to keep from creating a crater on the end, and then undercut and other.
And there, I mean, there's just a lot of different things that go on with the weld that you can see. Ultimately, the welder is responsible for the weld. The inspector is not. The inspector is there to verify that you did it correctly. If you tell the welding inspector that you did it correctly, and he comes by and says, "No, you didn't," he's not fixing it. You're fixing it. So, I was taught from a very, very young age that you're responsible for your weld. Nobody else is. And if you're not, somebody else will be, because you won't be there anymore.
Yep.
So you learn how to weld to the best of your ability.
And they put everybody's initials on every weld that they do, right?
And we're not, and they're not expecting perfection. They're not, you know, we want Picasso type welds and everything. It's just the pride in your work makes a whole lot of difference in the quality of your weld. If you don't care, then the inspector won't care that you don't have a job, because you won't be there. And it's really nothing personal, but if you put a lot of pride in your work, it will show in your weld. If you try real hard, it'll be there. And you know, I always go back to the prep. If you don't want to prep it, and you can give the inspector all sorts of excuses, like, well, yeah, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, but you know, can you accept it? No, sorry. If you didn't grind that off and you didn't clean this off, it's not acceptable because it shows in the weld. How many guys in here I can walk up to your weld and I can tell you what you did right and what you did wrong? How many guys did I do that to? Okay, of all those guys that I did that to, how many of you can do it now? How many of you can identify it?
Better, yeah.
That's the whole point of it. You identifying the problem and you fixing the problem before the inspector ever shows up. As far as the inspector is concerned, is if you fixed it without him being there, and he looks at it and it's a quality weld, He doesn't know you fixed it. You do, and you know that you did it right. And that's the whole point of the prep and watching what you're doing. So,
I like to think of it from, there is another perspective, okay? If you're welding up farm equipment and you own the equipment, or farm rail, or any garbage stuff that doesn't matter to anybody, there's certain real life situations where there is no inspectors. Usually the rule is if it's somebody else's equipment property or a bigger government type job, okay, it's obviously going to be fully inspected, and then the other total opposite end of the spectrum is how profitable can it be for you or for your boss, you know? And for the most part, if there's life, limb, or a third person involved that someone else owns it, okay, it's going to require inspection or a thorough following of the code. And there are some rare occasions where, okay, profitability says, hurry up, as long as you're safe, hurry up at any cost and get it done, you know. But a tow hitch, okay, there's a third person involved, you know, someone else could get hurt. If it's some fence rail, okay, not that big of a deal. I don't know, there's a lot of things that don't matter, but for the most part, you got to follow the code in every way and be inspected.
and also bring up that if you're welding it, yeah, it's not your house, but would your life want to be dependent on the welding you just did?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we always joke about, yeah, we can't see from my house, but yeah, if we see it fall, it don't matter where you're at, they're gonna find it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to see it
And
from
it's
your house,
real.
but
Yeah.
they will find it.
Hurting somebody, that is
Yeah.
real. That is very real.
So, you know, taking pride and saying, hey, you walk away from your job every day and go, hey, I would stand on that. I'd stand on that being my weld. That says something.
Could be owned by somebody else 20 years from now.
Your kids may be there, staying at that casino in 20 years. You want them to walk into that casino that you welded? And say, hey, don't walk into that casino because I welded it. Like, gee, thanks, Dad. You know? So,
I've gone into equipment rooms where it's all stainless piping, and you can see where one of the welders used a non-stainless brush on all the stainless piping. Well, now 40 of those joints are worth like, I mean, you literally have run part of the hotel, and it's perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs, you know, for using the wrong type of brush. So
it's all prep. It's all, like I said, it's all prep. Prep means, you know, it's 99% of it, you know?